Well, so what I wanted to talk about was about this idea of, or this perception that, hey, you can make the playoffs if you go 9-3. First of all, I wanna caution everyone that says that because based on the recent previous years, a couple of 3-loss teams would have been left out of the playoffs if the recent previous years had been a 12-team format. So based on that information, who do you think in the Big Ten would we be battling for, like, in a sense, the third best or fourth best team in the conference to get that justification to be within the top 12? And second, based on the teams that you guys suggest or predict, when it comes down to it, how many of those true head-to-head matchups do you think either USC will win, or it would be crucial for USC to win in order to make it to the playoffs?
Sorry, what was the last part, Dave? About which matchups? What now? I'm sorry, I kind of missed the ending.
Like, you're good. So which matchups do you think that would be important for USC to be a part of, or for USC to win in terms of the head-to-head matchups, like, say,
right,
USC versus Penn State or USC versus Michigan?
So where the wins need to come from and where the losses need to come from for the 9-3 to be possible. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay, Matt, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, so Dave, I wrote about this at Trojans Wire earlier this week. I tackled this precise question. So 2 main points. One, USC has to get at least one of the big non-con games. LSU, Notre Dame, got to get one. Obviously, you'd like to be 10-2. You're going to get prime position inside track to the playoff at 10-2. But if 9-3 is still playoff possible for USC, you got to get one of the 2 non-cons, and then you have to get one of Penn State or Michigan. You have to get a split of those 4 games. And so in terms of the Big Ten, we're likely going to be battling, if it comes down to a close call with USC being 9-3, Penn State, Michigan, Iowa are the teams most likely to be involved in the mix, because you think that Ohio State and Oregon, they're going to be in the playoff without too much of a problem. Here's the other piece of the puzzle that I talked about at Trojans Wire earlier this week. You want the Big Ten teams to do well, right? So you really want Michigan to beat Texas on September 7th. You really want that game to go the Big Ten's way with Michigan. And all our Michigan folks here, we'll be rooting for Michigan against Texas, no doubt about it. And you want the SEC to take those hits. You want Ole Miss to take a hit. You want Missouri to take a hit. Because if Ole Miss and Missouri are 9-3 and USC with its strength of schedule is 9-3, USC probably gets in ahead. But if Ole Miss and Missouri find a way to go 10-2, then they're probably ahead of USC. So that's really the collection of ingredients that USC is going to need in order to have a realistic chance at 9-3. And I would add, just right off the bat, if USC beats LSU, that immediately hurts LSU individually, but it also immediately hurts the SEC, right? So it's why the LSU game is the most important game of the year, and it's why I think the Penn State game is the second most important game of the year in terms of making the playoff, not in terms of the rivalries, right? Because UCLA and Notre Dame are set apart in that regard. But that's why I think LSU and Penn State are really the 2 big pivot point games of the year.
And because you've read a brilliant point about the perception part of it. And so you might as well add in there that you're probably going to be rooting for Notre Dame to beat Texas A&M early on. I mean, there's some pivotal games that need to go to show just how tough it is to play in the Big Ten. And then on top of that, with the Big Ten, so we all know that the Pac-12 got a lot of crap because they don't have any playoff teams. But look at how good those some of those, in the early part of the decade, how good those Stanford teams and those Oregon teams were knocking each other off and just doing that kind of stuff, and just not really getting there. Matt just anointed, damn you, Matt, the Ducks and the Buckeyes, everyone's 2 favorite teams in the Big Ten, as just having a shoe-in walk to the playoffs. I gotta say, if we're talking the Big Ten, is this conference that we talk about it being just really not just about 1 or 2 or 3 teams, then there's no real walk to it. Those rosters are super stacked, but again, there are some question marks in the coaching. I'll leave it right there. I mean, you can have a great roster. Matter of fact, you can have the best roster of the Pac-12 for 3 straight years and not have a championship to show for it. Doesn't mean you're going to win it. So many years the Pac-12 beat the crap out of itself. I wonder if there's a possibility, if you want to talk about the 4 teams, getting a 9-3 team in there. What if the SEC slips in the back door because the Pac-12 team, the Big Ten teams kick the crap out of each other and leaving the door open for an additional SEC team to get in with 3 losses. So I agree with Matt. The teams he named and everything, I'm not yet ready to anoint. With Ohio State, I kind of am realizing they're going to roll. You guys, they're going to be really good. Sorry, Michigan. They're going to be really good. They got questions. This is a whole different sidebar. We have to have a whole show, Matt, on how the hell did Michigan and Ohio State get these great defenses together and they cannot get a quarterback. I mean, how many 5-star quarterbacks do they have over at Ohio State? And they're working on trying to throw together Will Howard, a guy that was probably in a battle to be the starting quarterback at Kansas State. That's not bitter grapes. I would have loved Will Howard to come here and everything, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, how these 2 great programs stuck with no big name quarterback. That's the thing that's very curious to me. But anyway, different off topic. We'll talk about that some other time.
Well, Matt, I totally understand and agree with what you said. If anything, again, me being the lonely Trojan in a field of, corn in Iowa, all my Hawkeye buddies are telling me of how, because of what appears to be of how easy Iowa's schedule is this upcoming season, where like the only top 3 teams they face in conferences, Ohio State, Washington, Wisconsin, and Nebraska to an extent, right? Of how, hey, Iowa could slip in and truly be that, ball buster between Michigan, Penn State, and USC to like spoil, to potentially spoil those 3 teams of, getting into the, of getting into the playoffs. But again, that's assuming that Iowa, someone has a competent offense to at least put up 24 points again, which that's me being generous.
And this is,
but other than that, thanks guys. I really appreciate your word.
This is why we want to just emphasize the point. You want to be 10-2 to have to feel solid about the playoff. Like the 9-3 scenario, a plausible scenario exists, but you don't want to count on it. I want to be very clear about that. You want to be 10-2. So good reminder there.
I got a question about the playoff format and kind of how USC fits into it. So what would have to happen for USC to feel jobbed out of making the playoffs, kind of like Florida State last year? Because let's be clear, let's be upfront, I'm not the biggest fan of the 12-team format. So I kind of told myself, hey, if USC does not make the 12-team format, I have no reason to be mad. If you can't prove you're one of the top 12 teams in the nation definitively, then there's no reason to be mad. So what is kind of the point where you guys think like, okay, USC is getting screwed out of a 12-team playoff?
Okay, well, we saw what happened with Florida State, right? And how did Florida State get jobbed? The SEC, right? ESPN, having the SEC deal, being the SEC broadcaster, wanting those SEC teams to be in the field. So, like, if USC is 10-2, okay, and an SEC team is 9-3, and USC somehow gets snubbed in favor of the 9-3 SEC team, like that's the scenario to me that jumps off the page in terms of just an absolute unholy outrage, and the Trojans being snubbed. If that SEC team is 10-2, we can have a conversation, and USC fans would probably feel justified in saying that the Trojans were snubbed even at the hands of a 10-2 SEC team. But if 10-2 USC gets snubbed for a 9-3 SEC team, oh my God, everyone's going to want to burn the house down around here.
Well, and that's why I'm talking about how important, again, these non-conference games are. Is Notre Dame going to beat A&M, right? Is that going to happen? Is Michigan going to beat Texas? Now, all these narratives can be played out. I think that it's going to be funny how they're going, if it goes against the SEC with a narrative and the Paul Feinbaums, and I mean, I want a moratorium on that name. I don't want to say that name anymore on the show.
Yep.
You know, the ESPN people. That's what we'll say. The ESPN people that are really annoying and very, very biased. Then we'll know who we're talking about. I wonder what the narrative switches to then, because if we're talking about 10-2 USC team, that means that they're winning two of, you know, Michigan, Penn State, LSU, and so there you go. The LSU, that's gonna be a very important, that the price tag you're talking about. You have to beat LSU. So then you're talking about, so you beat LSU, and then you're beating, you know, Michigan, Penn State, or Notre Dame.
Penn State.
You know, if you're doing that and you're not getting in, they better have a pretty good resume on the other side. Especially like if an LSU finishes like what, they're picked to be fourth or third, like fourth or fifth, whatever. They're going to finish obviously in the top half. If they finish in the top half of the SEC and USC goes in week 1 and beats them, and then adds on by beating one of those other 3 teams, and then win, and then runs the slate, losing close, let's say, because if you get blown out, then they're you know, there, unless you're Oklahoma, right, back in the day, you're going to get in, you know, and they'll forget about it. But in general, if you lose a big game, you're kind of gone. You're out of the conversation. But assuming that the 2 losses are to those 2 of those 4 teams, and they beat 2 of those 4 teams, one of them being LSU, and nothing's embarrassing, it's going to be a hard sell to say that USC is not a at 10-2 getting in. That would be a huge snub.
It's just a weird spot to be in right now, from, you know, USC arguing, oh, like, we're number 1, number 2 in the nation, or maybe we can make a 4-team playoff too. Hey, we're one of the 12 best teams. It's just a weird spot to be in, that's what we're arguing for. And I get it. The rules changed, the grading system changed now, but, you know, it takes a little bit of getting used to.
I think if you go 10-2 in the Big Ten, and 2 of your 3 out-of-conference games are against LSU and Notre Dame, I think you're in the playoffs. I'll just leave it there.
Here's another point to discuss. Here's another point to discuss about the playoff. And again, you want to be 10-2. Like, you don't want to be 9-3, because then, like, you're at the mercy of the fates. You need so many more variables, so many more sources of help. But that having been said, if we're just to explore the hypothetical of USC getting in at 9-3 because of its strength of schedule, this is a really interesting point. And like, I don't think the answer is obvious, but I do lean in one direction more than the other. If the Big Ten has 4 playoff teams, so in other words, the conference champion, but 3 at-large teams, it's more likely that USC gets in as a 9-3 team if the Big Ten has 4. Why? Because that means that the Big Ten will have more strength at the top. Now, you could say, well, if the Big Ten gets only 3 teams in, Ohio State, Oregon, USC, you know, like that's 1 less spot. Like, Michigan's not getting that spot, Penn State's not getting that spot, Iowa's not getting that spot. You could make the argument 1 less Big Ten team being represented in the playoff. That's better for USC because that's 1 less spot taken up. But I would say, just in terms of getting in at 9-3, it's more likely USC gets in at 9-3 if the Big Ten has 4, because then the strength of USC's schedule, you could say USC played multiple playoff teams. You know, like, let's say Penn State is the 3rd Big Ten playoff team, or let's say Michigan is the 3rd Big Ten playoff team, or let's say Michigan and Penn State both get in, and like Oregon crashes out. Now, that would be pretty great. I don't think it's going to happen, but that would be good. If the Big Ten has 3 other playoff teams, then USC at 9-3 can then say, well, look, 3 guaranteed playoff teams in our conference. Meanwhile, the SEC only has 2 guaranteed playoff teams, or maybe 3. You know, so if the Big Ten is getting more teams in than the SEC, that would probably work in USC's favor. It would work in, like, if there's a tiebreaker between USC and LSU, USC would have it. If there's a tiebreaker between 9-3 USC and 9-3 Missouri, or 9-3 Ole Miss, if the Big Ten has 4 teams in, USC gets more leverage, most likely. It's not a guarantee, but most likely. So that is another plot point to consider in all of this.
The answer, Archer, is one of them is going to get screwed. That's your simple answer. But I mean, but come on. I
don't
mean,
know if you.
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna ask. I don't know if anyone else is on the line, but and you guys would probably beat this like a dead horse. But if that's all the case, and it does all come down to record, do you guys think we should keep Notre Dame or drop them? I want to keep Notre Dame, but that's kind of just coming from a traditional point of view. And if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best, and all that crap. I'm guessing you guys may or may not think differently.
I'm biased, and I don't think it in an irrational way. You got to remember that my dad taught me all my football. My dad grew up going to Catholic Central in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and he got scholarships to USC and to Notre Dame. And my grandfather was a huge Notre Dame fan. And I grew up with my dad. It was in college for the McKay years. And my dad was never going to leave USC. My dad actually got 3 degrees from USC. And so basically, when I say the McKay years, my dad was pretty much there for the McKay years. And so when you talk about college football as a whole, I mean, it's kind of gone away from it. Obviously, either one school's been up, the other one's been down. But it's going all the way back. You have to go probably all the way back to the 80s, except for that 2005 game. Where, the 88 game where he had the big matchup. The last time was really on the board for both of them, I think. I'm pretty sure. So it's kind of lost a lot of that specialness that it had going way back. But I talked about Will ND, who's a big Notre Dame fan on one of our shows. And I said, when you define and talk about who Notre Dame is, you can't have that conversation without talking about USC. And when you talk about USC football, you really can't have that conversation without talking about Notre Dame. So to end this because we feel that we can't get into a 12-team playoff or we could be more competitive if we don't. I mean, Lincoln Riley made a very compelling argument, and it makes complete sense. And people are going to do where you have to decide. It would absolutely put them in the best position to be in the playoffs by dumping Notre Dame and picking up, a team like a lot of teams schedule, really easy out of conference. That's the answer. My answer is you keep Notre Dame, and then if you're going to schedule, you schedule 2 mediocre teams on the other side, but you never get rid of Notre Dame.
Okay, that's the answer. Let you guys keep on taking other calls and keep on talking, but thank you guys for taking my call. I really appreciate it. Hope you and all the other viewers have a great night, and fight on.
Thank you. Thanks for staying up late with us.
No problem. Y'all have a good one.
Okay, Tim has some audio to get sorted out here. Obviously, he can't take calls until his mic gets sorted. But want to touch on, while Tim gets the audio sorted out, Lisa Sims asked us, Ohio State or Oregon, who do you have winning that game in Eugene? Lisa, I have Oregon winning the game in Eugene, but I think that Ohio State's going to get Oregon in the rematch in the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis. So Ohio State wins the Big Ten, gets the automatic bid and the first round bye in the playoff, with Oregon getting a second spot in the Big Ten. That's how I see it working out in the Big Ten. So it's going to be really interesting to see. And, let's keep in mind, and I don't know if Tim's audio is there yet. Is it?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
I think
good.
I think my soundboard is actually overheating, Matt.
Yeah. Just a final point is that October 12th, if there is one college football Saturday after the first part of the season that you want to set aside, October 12th, because you have Penn State, USC, you have Ohio State, Oregon, you have Texas, Oklahoma. There are like 6 or 7 absolute must-see games on Saturday, October 12th. So that is definitely a clear the calendar type game. USC plays Utah State on September 7, and then there's the off week on September 14. So if you have to balance chores in real life versus college football this season, like cash in your poker chips on September 7 and 14, do the errands, do the things with the family, and make sure you have your time on the couch on October 12th, because that day is going to light up college football. It's one of the great slates of all time. And who knows, folks, maybe October 12, 2024 will be a mid-October Saturday on par with October 15, 2005. USC over Notre Dame with the Bush push and so many other games, arguably the greatest college football Saturday of our lifetime. So October 12 offers at least the potential to be something very special this year.
I think you got me now? Yeah, we did have 2 calls. I think I dropped them. So if you guys want to get in, make sure you get in now, because I think where are we going with our time here? We got our 12 minutes. I guess we could hit the chat because we have a call-in show. I do apologize. There were a couple people that were waiting. You got a wide open phone. If you're still here, give us a call. If you're on Twitter, you don't need to be in the chat. You can call right here at the number 888-997-4539, 888-99 Riley. Give us a call. My soundboard's on life support. I got the fan on it now, so hopefully that's going to cool it.
And we have to say 284 people watching us at 12:49 a.m. in the East, 11:49 in the Central Time Zone. That's a lot of loyalty from our audience here at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much for staying up late with us. Late night done right here on the USC channel.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.